Tonight, the sun will try to kill you before noon, not with a blade, not with an army, not with the teeth of a crocodile hidden beneath the river. It will do it slowly, almost beautifully, by rising into a sky without a single cloud and turning the whole valley of the Nile into a furnace of white stone, hot dust and trembling air. By the middle of the day, the temperature will climb towards 120 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly 49 degrees Celsius. The ground outside will burn through thin sandals. Mud brick walls will radiate the heat they have swallowed. The wind will offer no relief. It will move across your face like breath from an oven. And yet, people will work. Boats will cross the Nile. Bakers will pull bread from clay ovens. Scribes will count sacks of grain. Farmers will bend beside irrigation channels. Stoneworkers on the western bank will lift tools beneath cliffs that glow like copper. Priests will enter cool, shadowed halls, carrying incense for gods whose painted eyes never seem to close. This is not a day of war, plague, or royal ceremony. No pyramid will be raised before sunset. No pharaoh will summon you to court. Nothing that happens today will enter a king list or appear on the wall of a temple. It is only an ordinary day. And that may be what makes it extraordinary, because tonight you are not a ruler wrapped in gold. You are not a famous architect, a general, or a high priest. You are one of the countless people whose names will not survive, living in the great city of Thebes more than 3,000 years ago. You belong to a household of workers tied to a temple estate. You carry messages, measures, and small loads between storehouses, river landings, and workshops. Your work is humble, but it will take you through almost every layer of the city before the heat reaches its worst. You will wake before dawn, because everyone who understands this country understands the sun. You will drink while the stars are still visible. You will eat bread flavored with smoke from yesterday's oven. You will cross the Nile while the air is briefly cool enough to make you forget what is coming. Then the light will climb. As it does, you will discover how ancient Egyptians built an entire civilization around heat. Thick walls, narrow streets, shaded courtyards, linen clothing, porous water jars, and a daily rhythm that bends around the sky. You will learn why the river was more than water, why bread could be wages, why a temple was also a bank and warehouse, and why the people who built royal tombs sometimes laid down their tools and refused to work when their grain failed to arrive. You will see a world that is both strange and familiar, a world of gods, spells, and sacred animals, but also rent, gossip, tired feet, broken tools, family arguments, missed deliveries, and neighbors borrowing food. A world where the Great Pyramid is already ancient history. A world in which people look back on older times, just as you do. And all through the day, one question will follow you. How did anyone survive this heat without electricity, refrigeration, modern plumbing, or the promise of an air-conditioned room? The answer is not one invention. It is hundreds of small decisions, repeated by generations. Where to build, when to move, what to wear, what to drink, how to store water, when to stop speaking and simply sit still. For now, the sun has not yet appeared. The city is dark. The roofs are cool. The Nile is a black ribbon beneath the last stars. And somewhere in the distance, a donkey gives one impatient call before falling silent again. You are lying on a reed mat on the flat roof of your house. The night air touches your skin. Around you, your family sleeps in quiet shapes, beneath thin linen cloth. Then someone beside you whispers your name. It is time to rise. The last cool hour has begun. You open your eyes to a sky filled with stars. For a few moments, you do not move. The roof beneath your mat, still, carries a little of the night's coolness, and the air smells faintly of dust, river water, and the cooking fires that died across the neighborhood several hours ago. Sleeping on the roof is not a romantic choice. In the hot season, the rooms below can remain warm long after sunset. Mud brick protects a house from the worst of the day, but it also holds some of that heat into the evening. The flat roof, reached by a simple stair or ladder, offers moving air and a view of the stars. Families use it as another room, drying food there, repairing nets, storing baskets, and, on the hottest nights, sleeping beneath the open sky. Beside you, an older relative is already folding a linen sheet. Another person rolls the reed mats before the morning damp can settle into them. Nobody wastes movement. In this hour, the body is still comfortable, and the household must complete as much as possible before the sun turns every task into labor. You sit up. The city around you remains mostly dark, but not silent. A wooden door closes somewhere in the lane below. Clay jars knock softly together. A baby begins to cry and is soothed almost at once. From another rooftop comes the scraping sound of grain being poured into a stone quern. Your house is built from mud brick, the ordinary material of Egypt. Stone belongs to temples, tombs, and royal monuments because stone is meant to last. Houses belong to the living, and the living rebuild. Nile mud mixed with chopped straw is shaped into bricks and dried in the sun. The walls are thick. The windows are small and set high. The rooms open around a courtyard where much of the family's work takes place. From the roof, you can see the darker shapes of other houses pressed close together, their walls irregular, their roofs connected by lines of shadow. Beyond them, the monumental parts of Thebes rise as pale silhouettes, pylons, columns, obelisks, and gateways built for gods and kings. In a little while, the first sunlight will strike their upper stones before it reaches your street. You descend into the house. The interior is almost black after the stars. Your hand finds the wall automatically. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, cool and smooth where generations of sandals have passed. In the central courtyard, a small oil lamp burns beside a water jar. Its flame is tiny, fed by oil or animal fat through a twisted fiber wick. You dress simply. A clean linen garment is wrapped and tied around your waist. Linen is one of Egypt's answers to heat. Light, breathable, and made from flax grown beside the river. The finest cloth can be almost transparent, but your clothing is ordinary, coarser, and repaired in several places. You fasten sandals made from leather or woven plant fiber, knowing you may remove them later to protect them from wear. There is no heavy perfume poured over you, no golden collar, no elaborate wig. Those things belong to ceremonies, wealthy households, and painted scenes that make ancient life appear richer than it was for most people. You wash your face and hands with a little water from a basin. Water must be used, but never thoughtlessly. An older woman in the household checks the sky through the open courtyard. She does not need a clock. The stars, the color of the eastern horizon, and the habits of neighbors are enough. Ancient Egyptians divide the day and night into hours, but those hours are not always equal in the way yours are. Daylight hours lengthen and shorten with the season. Shadow clocks can follow the sun, while water clocks measure time in darkness or inside temple spaces. Here, ordinary life begins when the body, the sky, and the work agree that it should. A faint line of grey appears above the eastern roofs. Someone places a hand on the large water jar. It is lighter than it should be. Before breakfast, before work, before the sun rises, you will need more water. The water jar stands taller than a child, wide through the body, narrow at the neck. Its surface is rough and slightly damp. That dampness is useful. Water slowly passes through the tiny pores of the fired clay and evaporates from the outside. As it evaporates, it carries away some heat, cooling the water within. The effect is modest, but in a country where midday air can feel like flame, modest. Differences matter. You lift two smaller jars and step into the lane. The street is narrow enough for the upper walls of houses to shade much of it after sunrise. At this hour, it is blue with pre-dawn light. The ground is hard, dusty, and uneven. Household rubbish, straw, and animal droppings gather in places despite regular sweeping. The grand avenues, shown in temple art, are not the streets most people walk each morning. Several neighbors are already moving in the same direction. Some carry vessels balanced against a shoulder. Others guide donkeys loaded with baskets. A boy passes with a yoke across his back and two small jars hanging from cords. Nobody speaks loudly. The air is cool enough to preserve. Your destination is not the middle of the Nile itself. Depending on where a household stands, people may draw water from wells, canals, basins, river landings, or vessels delivered by water carriers. The Nile is the source behind them all, but obtaining clean water requires judgment. The river gives life, yet water taken near busy banks can hold mud, waste, and whatever the current has carried. At a neighborhood well, a short line has formed, the stone or plaster. Around it is dark from spilled water. A woman lowers a vessel using rope, while another steadies the container waiting beside her. The work looks easy until you take your turn. Water is heavy. A single liter weighs about a kilogram, and a family needs it not only for drinking, but for cooking, washing, mixing mud, brewing beer, dampening floors, and caring for animals. You pull carefully, hand over hand. The rope is rough against your palms. The jar rises from darkness, dripping. The first water is poured through a cloth into your vessel. Settling, filtering, and storing can remove some visible dirt, though no one understands microbes in the modern sense. People know from experience that some water smells wrong. Some causes sickness and some remains. Better when kept covered and cool. Knowledge can exist long before anyone knows the hidden mechanism behind it. An old man beside the well lifts a cup and drinks slowly. He does not wait until thirst becomes desperate. In extreme heat, thirst is a warning that may arrive after the body has already begun losing too much water. Ancient workers survive not because they are naturally stronger than modern people, but because daily routines are built around repeated drinking, shade, and reduced effort at the worst hours. You fill both jars, leaving a little empty space so the water does not spill with each step. Then you begin the return journey. The weight pulls against your shoulders. The lane seems longer than before. You pass a doorway where someone has sprinkled water across the packed floor. As it evaporates, it will cool the surface and settle dust. A woven screen hangs damp across another entrance, allowing air to pass while softening the heat. These are simple technologies, but an entire city depends on them. When you return, the large household jar is refilled. A clean cloth covers its neck. A cup is placed nearby, and the smallest children are given water before anyone begins the morning meal. You drink too. The water tastes of clay. It is cool only by comparison, but the first mouthful seems to reach every part of your body. Outside, birds begin calling from the riverbanks. The eastern sky is no longer gray. It is pale gold. The sun has not yet crossed the horizon, but already the last cool hour is ending. You leave the house as the city begins to wake. Thebes is not one continuous field of monuments. It is a living spread of neighborhoods, workshops, gardens, quays, temples, storage yards, and open land divided by walls and threaded with lanes. The Nile runs through its center like a road made of water. To the east lies the city of the living, where the sun rises. To the west lie cliffs, cemeteries, and royal tombs, where the sun appears to descend into the realm of the dead. The symbolism is powerful, but daily life is practical. People cross between east and west for work, deliveries, worship and family obligations. The dead may occupy the West, but thousands of living workers do too. You walk towards a temple storehouse carrying a small wooden tablet, a sealed message, and an empty cloth sack. Your first task is to collect a measured ration of grain and deliver part of it to a riverside landing. The estate that employs your household controls fields, herds, workshops, and warehouses. A temple is a sacred house for a god, but it is also an economic machine. The lane opens into a wider street. Here the city reveals its scale. A donkey train moves past, each animal carrying panniers. A brewer's apprentice rolls a large jar onto a pad of straw. Two fishermen carry a net between them, still wet and shining. A carpenter walks with tools tucked beneath one arm. A scribe in a clean linen kilt follows an assistant carrying a writing palette, reed brushes and cakes of black and red pigment. Above them rise walls covered in painted relief. The colors are fresher than the fragments that survive in museums. Blue, red, yellow, green, white, and black. Ancient Egypt is not a landscape of bare beige stone. Temples are painted, statues are painted, coffins, houses, furniture, and boats carry color. Wherever people can afford the labor, the upper edge of a pylon catches the first sunlight. For a moment, the enormous gateway glows while the street remains in shadow. An obelisk beyond it turns bright along one side, its polished stone reflecting the new day. At the top, a cap of electrum or another shining material may once have flashed like a small sun. You pause only briefly. The city has seen this every morning, but the sight still holds power. The pharaoh whose name appears on these walls claims to maintain order in the universe. His carved image is larger than every enemy, larger than every servant, and often larger than life itself. Yet the city around the monument is filled with people who will never see the king in person. For them, royal power arrives as taxes, work demands, official seals, temple festivals, and the names stamped on buildings. You turn into another lane where shade still holds. A neighbor mentions that far to the north, near Memphis, the ancient pyramids rise above the desert. To you, they are already relics from a distant past. The Great Pyramid is more than 1,000 years old in your lifetime. Its builders are as remote from you as medieval kings are from a person in the modern world. This is one of the strangest truths about ancient Egypt. Even ancient Egyptians lived among antiquities. They restored old monuments, copied older texts, entered tombs built centuries before, and told stories about rulers whose world had vanished. The thought follows you as you approach the storehouse. The doorway is low and shaded. Inside, the air smells of dry straw, dust, and grain. Beyond the threshold, rows of storage bins disappear into cool darkness. The sun has risen, but for the moment you have escaped it. The grain store is already busy. Workers move between plastered bins while a scribe sits near the entrance with a wooden board across his knees. He records quantities in neat signs, using black ink for the main text and red for headings, totals, or corrections. Beside him, an assistant calls out measurements. Grain is not merely food. It is wealth, tax, salary, and security. Your household may receive rations in emmer, wheat, or barley. Workers employed on royal and temple projects can be paid in grain, oil, fish, vegetables, cloth, and other supplies rather than coins, because coined money will not become normal in Egypt until much later. Value is measured through standard units and compared against goods. A bed, a jar of oil, or a copper tool can be priced in terms of weight or grain. Even when no actual metal changes hands, the scribe checks your sealed message. He presses the clay seal between his fingers, examines the mark, and nods. A worker measures grain into your sack using a standard container. Each measure is leveled carefully. If too much disappears from storage, someone must answer. If too little reaches workers, complaints spread quickly. You lift the sack. It is heavier than it looks. Before leaving, you are handed a small piece of bread and an onion from a shared basket. This is your true breakfast, eaten standing in the storehouse shade. Egyptian bread can be made in many forms: flat, conical, round, coarse, or fine, sometimes flavored with dates, herbs, or oil. Yours is dense and slightly gritty. Grain ground on stone may carry tiny mineral particles into the flour, contributing over years to heavy wear on. Teeth. Archaeological remains often show Egyptians with severely worn teeth, even among people wealthy enough to eat well. You tear the bread with your hands. The crust tastes smoky. The onion is sharp and wet, bringing sudden freshness. A cup of beer follows. Ancient Egyptian beer is not identical to a modern bottled drink. It may be cloudy, nutritious, and varied in strength. Produced from grain through processes that combine bread making, malting, and fermentation. People drink it, offer it to gods, pay it as rations, and include it in meals. Children may receive weaker forms or grain drinks, though the details vary across time and place. The beer does not replace water. On a day like this, water remains essential, but the drink supplies calories and makes use of grain that the state and temples collect in enormous quantities. Around you, the storehouse reveals the scale of organized life. The Nile Valley produces abundance, but abundance must be measured, moved, and protected. Floods vary. Insects invade. Mold spreads. Officials take shares. Temples accumulate reserves. A failed harvest can turn administration into survival. The scribe raises his voice at a porter who has placed a jar in the pot. Wrong row. The porter answers with a look that would be recognizable in any warehouse, in any age. For all its gods and monuments, this civilization runs on lists. Lists of grain, lists of cattle, lists of workmen, lists of cloth, oil, bread, beer, and tools. Bureaucracy is one of Egypt's most powerful inventions. Even if no one carves a colossal statue in honor of the person who checks a ration account, you finish the bread and onion, then drink water from your own small flask. The sack is tied across your shoulder. The message tablet is secured beneath your belt. Outside the doorway, sunlight has reached the street. You can already feel the difference between shadow and light. The day is still young, but the heat has begun its work. The route to the river leads downhill, through streets that grow brighter with every turn. You keep close to the shaded sides of walls. Everyone does. A person who walks directly through sunlight, when shadow is available, wastes strength for no reason. Even animals choose carefully. Donkeys stand with heads lowered beneath awnings. Dogs lie against cool mud brick. Pigeons gather under roof edges, waiting for the city to offer grain. At the river landing, the world opens. The Nile is broad, moving slowly beneath the morning light. Its surface reflects gold near the east and deep blue beneath the western cliffs. Boats of many sizes crowd the bank. Small reed craft, wooden ferries, fishing boats, cargo vessels, and elegant ceremonial ships belonging to temples or officials. For Egypt, the river is road, field, calendar, and source of life. Traveling north can be helped by the current. Traveling south can be helped by prevailing winds that often blow from the north, filling square sails. The geography creates a natural system of transport, allowing stone, grain, cattle, timber, soldiers, and messages to move through a long, narrow country. You step into a ferry with several other passengers. The boatman takes your grain sack and places it low in the hull. Balance matters. A woman holds a basket containing geese whose necks move in constant suspicion. Two workmen sit beside copper tools wrapped in cloth. A priest's assistant carries a bundle of flowers and keeps it away from muddy sandals. The boat pushes away. Coolness rises from the water. It is the most comfortable moment you are likely to feel all day. You trail your fingers close to the surface, but do not let them remain there. The Nile contains fish, plants, mud, and living creatures that deserve respect. Crocodiles are less common in some heavily settled northern stretches than stories suggest, but they are real. Hippopotamuses, once widespread, can damage crops and boats and are dangerous when disturbed. The river is generous, never harmless. The city behind you begins to widen into a panorama. Temple walls rise above palms. Smoke drifts from ovens. Fields and gardens form green bands against desert earth. Beyond the cultivated land, the landscape changes suddenly. Egypt is not an endless sea of sand. Life crowds into the valley and delta, while desert begins close beside it. Halfway across, the boatman adjusts the sail. The cloth snaps once, then fills. The ferry turns gently towards the western bank. You look south. In the far distance, heat has already begun to distort the horizon. The air trembles above exposed stone. Someone on the boat speaks of the day's temperature. There is no Fahrenheit scale, no thermometer hanging in a shaded box. People judge heat through experience. The speed at which water warms, the behavior of animals, the feel of walls, the color of the sky, and the time at which workers can no longer continue safely. The boat reaches the western side. Here the fertile strip is narrower. Beyond gardens and fields rise the cliffs of the Theban necropolis, filled with tombs, paths, shrines, and work settlements. The peaks are pale now, but by afternoon they will blaze. You shoulder the grain sack again. Before you leave the landing, you refill your flask from a covered vessel maintained for workers. The water is cool from shade and porous clay. The boatman tells you to drink more than you think you need. You obey. Then you turn towards the fields, where farmers are already working. Beneath the growing sun, the edge of the cultivated land is marked by color. On one side lies green, barley, emmer, vegetables, palms, sycamore, figs, vines, and reeds. On the other lies desert, pale gravel, dust, and rising stone. The boundary can be so sharp that a few steps carry you from fertile soil into a landscape where almost nothing grows. The fields depend on the Nile, but not in the simple way later images of Egypt sometimes suggest. For much of ancient history, the river's annual flood spreads water and rich silt across basin fields. Dikes and channels guide it. As waters retreat, farmers sow into damp soil. The agricultural year follows 3 broad seasons: Akhet, the inundation; Peret, the season of emergence and growth; and Shemu, the harvest, dry season. You are living deep in Shemu when the heat is strongest and irrigation requires constant work. Near a channel, 2 men operate a shaduf, a long pole balanced on a stet support, with a bucket at one end and a counterweight at the other. They lower the bucket into water, then use the weight to help raise it and pour it into a higher channel. The device is simple, effective, and exhausting when repeated for hours. Another worker repairs a bank with mud packed by hand. A child drives birds away from a patch of grain stubble. Cattle stand in shallow shade, their ribs moving slowly with each breath. You deliver part of the grain ration to an overseer who checks the seal and calls several names. The workers gather briefly. Their payment may support households beyond this field. Grain becomes bread, beer, seed, and trade. A missing delivery is never merely an accounting problem. The overseer offers you a place beneath a palm leaf shelter while he marks the receipt. You accept at once. From the shade, you watch the work. Agriculture has changed human life, but it has not made life easy. Farming creates food surpluses capable of supporting cities, priests, scribes, soldiers, and craftsmen. It also ties people to seasons, floods, pests, officials, and heavy physical labor. Ancient Egyptian art often shows agricultural scenes in orderly rows, plowing, sowing, harvesting, and threshing. The reality includes blisters, insects, disputes, broken tools, and fear that the river will rise too little or too much. A farmer guides a wooden plow drawn by cattle across dry ground that will be prepared for later use. The plow is light compared with modern machinery. Its purpose is often to scratch and open the soil rather than turn it deeply. Seed can be scattered, then trampled into earth by animals. Near the water, flax plants have been processed for fiber. From this plant comes the linen that clothes the country, wraps the dead, shades courtyards, and forms sails on the Nile. Producing fine linen requires long, skilled work. Harvesting, soaking, separating fibers, spinning, thread, and weaving cloth. The overseer finishes the receipt and returns your seal token. Before you stand, an older farmer points towards the desert hills. The sun has risen above them completely. You notice that shadows are already shorter. The palm shelter feels warmer than it did only minutes ago. Flies gather at the edge of your eyes. The air has lost the softness it carried over the river. The farmer lifts a damp cloth and wraps it loosely around his head and neck. Others adjust their schedules. The hardest field work will pause when the sun reaches its highest point. Not all work can stop, but no, one sensible treats midday as if it were morning. You thank the overseer and leave. Your next delivery lies towards the temple workshops, where stone, wood, copper, paint, and human patience are being turned into objects meant to outlast everyone who made them. To reach them, you must cross open ground. The heat is waiting. The first open stretch is only a few hundred paces, but it changes the day. You leave the shade of palms and mud brick walls and step onto a broad road between fields, storage yards, and temple land. Sunlight lands on your shoulders with physical weight. The air is still. Dust rises around your sandals and hangs rather than drifting away. At first, the body responds quietly. Blood vessels near the skin widen. Sweat begins to form beneath your linen. Your heart works a little harder to move heat towards the surface. These reactions are automatic, ancient, and essential, but they depend on water. Sweat can cool only when it evaporates, and in extreme heat the body loses fluid faster than thirst may fully describe. You slow your pace. This is not weakness. It is intelligence. Modern visitors sometimes imagine ancient workers performing every task at the same speed, under every condition, as though people in the past were built from different flesh. They were not. They rested, shifted, schedules, sought shade, drank repeatedly, and sometimes suffered when demands exceeded what a body could bear. The road ahead shimmers. A group of porters moves towards you carrying baskets suspended from shoulder poles. Their steps are short and even. Each man has wrapped linen around his head. One has darkened the skin around his eyes with kohl, which may reduce glare as well as carry. Cosmetic, protective, and religious meaning. The black lines are not merely decoration for wealthy portraits. Eye paint is used across society in different forms, made from minerals ground and mixed into paste. You pass without speaking. Conversation wastes breath in the open sun. Near a wall, a donkey has stopped. Its owner pulls gently at the halter, then gives up and unloads one basket so the animal can recover. The donkey's ears turn towards him, unimpressed. Animals are central to transport because wheeled carts are less useful in many narrow streets and soft agricultural areas. Donkeys move grain, jars, tools, and people through the valley. They also refuse when they have had enough. You reach the shadow of a gateway and stand within it. The difference is immediate. Shade does not make the air cold, but it removes direct solar radiation. Your skin stops receiving heat from the sun itself, and the body can begin catching up. A guard at the gateway drinks from a jar and gestures for you to do the same. You tilt your flask slowly. Warm water still protects better than no water. You wet the edge of a cloth and press it to the back of your neck. Beyond the gate lies a service court belonging to a temple complex. Workers unload wood, copper ingots, stone blocks, baskets of charcoal, and jars of oil. Much of the material has traveled enormous distances. Egypt has stone and gold, but good construction timber is scarce. Cedar from Lebanon, ebony from regions farther south, incense from Punt, metals from desert, mines or foreign trade all enter royal and temple. Networks. The heat of this day is local. The economy around you reaches across continents. A foreman examines your tablet and points towards a covered passage. You enter it gladly. The passage leads between high walls. Narrow openings near the roof admit strips of light while keeping most of the corridor in shadow. Air moves faintly through the space, pulled by differences in temperature. Between courtyard. Here you begin to understand ancient architecture, not as a collection of beautiful facades, but as an argument with climate. Thick mud brick walls slow the movement of heat. Courtyards create shaded zones. Roofs provide sleeping space. Small openings control. High ceilings allow warmer air to rise. Reed mats and linen. Awnings transform open areas into usable rooms. Orientation towards prevailing winds can bring relief. No single feature creates comfort. Together, they make survival ordinary. At the far end of the passage, a door opens into a vast stone court. Columns rise ahead of you like a forest made by human hands. The temple waits in shadow. The first thing you feel inside the temple court is not holiness. It is coolness. Stone paving remains warm beneath your sandals, but the towering columns interrupt the sun. Roofed corridors hold deep shade. The air smells of incense, oil, dust, and water poured over the floor to clean and cool it. Then the scale reaches you. Columns are painted with bands of color and carved with hieroglyphs. Their capitals open like papyrus or lotus flowers. Reliefs show the king offering wine, incense, bread and flowers to gods. Above eye level, scenes repeat in perfect order, creating a universe where every ritual succeeds, and Egypt remains eternally balanced. Daily reality is messier. A porter argues about missing rope. A junior priest hurries past because he is late. A cleaner sweeps bird droppings from a corner. Sacred space still requires ordinary labor. You are not permitted into the deepest sanctuary. Most Egyptians never enter it. The innermost rooms belong to the god's image, and the priests who serve it. At dawn, authorized priests open the shrine, purify the statue, dress it, apply oils, and present food and drink. The offerings do not vanish. After the ritual, much of the food returns into the temple economy and can support priests and workers. The god's daily meal is also administration. Your delivery goes to a workshop court behind the formal temple spaces. Here, sculptors, carpenters, metal workers, leather workers, painters, and faience makers produce objects for worship, storage, and royal projects. A stoneworker sits cross-legged beside a block of limestone. He holds a copper chisel, while another man strikes it with a wooden mallet. Copper is softer than the steel tools of your time, so edges require frequent sharpening. Harder stones demand pounding tools made from dolerite, abrasive sand, and enormous patience. Nearby, a painter mixes pigment on a flat palette. Black may come from carbon, white from gypsum, red and yellow from ochres, blue from a synthetic pigment, now called Egyptian blue. It is one of the world's earliest artificial pigments, made through controlled heating of mineral ingredients. The color on his brush is not merely found in nature, it is manufactured knowledge. He outlines a figure using red guidelines, then corrects part of the drawing in black. Human bodies follow conventions. Heads in profile, eyes seen frontally, shoulders broad, legs shown from the side. The goal is not a frozen photograph. It is completeness, legibility, and order. You deliver the grain to the workshop steward. He counts the sacks, checks the seal, and asks you to wait while a receipt is prepared. Waiting is welcome. You sit beneath a colonnade and watch dust move through a beam of light. Somewhere deeper in the complex, a sistrum rattles softly. Priests chant, words too distant to understand. Temple ritual is meant to maintain Mat, the principle of order, truth, balance, and rightness. The opposite is chaos, disorder, violence, hunger, rebellion, the desert threatening the cultivated land. Every morning the sun rises, but ancient Egyptians do not take that victory for granted. The gods must be served, the king must act, the proper words must be spoken. Yet outside these walls, Mat also depends on water arriving, grain being measured fairly, and workers receiving what they are owed. The receipt returns with a small red mark beside the total. You secure it carefully. Before leaving, you glance towards an open court where sunlight falls on. a colossal statue. The figure's feet alone are taller than a child. The king looks forward with a calm expression. No living person could maintain in this temperature. The monument declares permanence. Around its base, workers carry jars, wipe sweat, and complain about the heat. Stone promises eternity. Human beings still need shade. You leave the ceremonial court through a side passage and enter the part of the temple that visitors from later ages rarely imagine. There are granaries, kitchens, offices, animal pens, storerooms, and workshops. There are walls of mud brick rather than carved stone. There are doors sealed with clay, baskets marked for delivery, and scribes, sitting beneath awnings with rolls of papyrus weighted against the breeze. This is the temple behind the temple. Its wealth comes from land, labor, donations, conquest, and royal favor. Large institutions can control fields across Egypt, employ thousands of people, and receive goods from distant provinces. The boundary between religion and economy is not clean because the gods' household functions like an enormous estate. A clerk stops you and asks where you are going next. You show the receipt. He adds another instruction. Carry a small jar of lamp oil and a packet of linen thread to a supply boat, leaving for the Western work village. The jar is sealed with clay and tied into a padded basket. Oil is valuable. It lights lamps, treats skin, perfumes, rituals, and supports cooking or craft processes depending on the type. The thread is even more important than it looks. Linen holds clothing together, repairs sacks, binds objects, and forms part of bandages, nets, and sails. You wait while the clerk writes a label in hieratic, the flowing script used for everyday documents. Monumental hieroglyphs are beautiful but slow. Administration needs speed. A trained scribe can record accounts, letters, legal disputes, school exercises, medical texts, and private jokes in quicker forms of writing. Most people cannot read these signs. Literacy gives scribes unusual power. A written order can travel beyond the person who spoke it. A record can be checked months later. A complaint can reach an official. A person's name can survive after the body is gone. Scribal education is demanding. Students copy model texts, practice signs, and receive correction. Some school exercises praise the scribes' life by describing every other occupation as miserable. The farmer, covered in mud, the soldier exhausted, the washerman beside crocodiles. The exaggeration is partly recruitment. Every profession likes to imagine its own hardships are the most refined. A young apprentice nearby copies a line onto a limestone flake. Papyrus is too valuable for every exercise. So broken pottery and limestone pieces ostraca become notebooks, receipts, and message boards. Thousands of such fragments preserve details that royal inscriptions ignore. Attendance lists, jokes, sketches, love poems, shopping notes, and explanations for missing work. One worker was absent because he was brewing beer, another because he was bitten by a scorpion, another because he was quarreling with his wife. Ancient people become unexpectedly close when bureaucracy records their excuses. The apprentice makes an error. His teacher taps the wrong sign with a read and waits. The boy corrects it, jaw tight with embarrassment.
You remember your own first days carrying sealed messages, afraid of
losing something you could not read. The clerk finishes the label and ties it to the basket. He warns you not to place the oil jar directly in the sun. Heat can loosen seals and spoil contents. You lift the load. It is not heavy, but it must remain upright. A gong or shouted signal passes through the court. Workers begin, shifting toward shade. The sun is approaching its highest climb. You look at the narrow strip of sky above the walls. It has become almost white. Your next boat will not wait forever, but neither will your body. Continue without rest. The clerk points towards a room where water jars stand in darkness. You enter, and for a few minutes the whole world becomes the sound of water pouring into a cup. By the time you return to the river, the eastern bank seems to be fading behind light. The air above roofs and quays trembles. Colors flatten. White plaster becomes painful to look at. Even the Nile appears brighter, its reflections breaking into knives of light. The supply boat has a woven canopy over part of the deck. You sit beneath it, beside jars of oil, baskets of grain, bundles of linen, and replacement tools. The boatmen push away from the bank with long poles before raising a small sail. The western cliffs loom ahead. Your destination is a settlement of skilled workers responsible for cutting and decorating royal tombs. In your era, such a village stands in a dry valley, now known as Deir el-Medina. Its residents are not nameless slaves driven by whips. They are specialized craftsmen, supported by the state. Stone cutters, plasterers, draftsmen, painters, carpenters, and laborers. Their work is prestigious, secretive, closely supervised. They also have families, debts, rivalries, and complaints. The boat lands near a path where supplies are transferred to donkeys, porters. You join a small group moving inland. The village lies away from the floodplain, placed near the royal tombs, but separated from easy water. Every jar must be carried. The desert protects tombs from moisture, yet makes living difficult. The climb is gradual, but heat turns it steep. You pass limestone chips scattered across the ground. Paths lead towards hidden valleys where kings hope to rest beyond robbery and decay. The pyramids of earlier rulers advertised royal burials to the horizon. New kingdom kings choose tombs cut into remote cliffs, though secrecy will not protect them forever. At the village gate, houses press together within a wall. The main street is narrow. Homes are small, arranged in rows with front rooms, living spaces, storage areas, and kitchens towards the rear. Some walls carry household shrines. Roofs provide additional working and sleeping space. A supply official checks your labels. The oil and thread are accepted. The grain account receives more attention. Workers here depend on regular rations. Records from this community preserve one of history's earliest known labor strikes, when payments were delayed and crews stopped work, sat near official buildings and demanded their grain. Their complaint was not abstract rebellion. Their families needed food. Today the ration has arrived, and no strike begins. Still, conversation around the storehouse is sharp. A worker claims his household received less oil than another. An official insists the measure was correct. A neighbor mutters that measures become smaller whenever they pass through too many hands. Human suspicion requires no translation. You carry the thread to a house where a woman repairs linen for a work crew. She offers you shade in the doorway. Her hands move quickly, drawing fiber through cloth with a needle or pointed tool. Textiles are valuable enough to be repaired again and again. A garment can be recut, patched, passed down, and finally turned into rags or wrappings. From inside the house comes the sound of a child reciting signs. Literacy in this village is unusually high because the work requires plans, labels, notes, and skilled draftsmanship. Private letters and legal documents circulate among families. On a wall, a small painted image of the household god, Bes, shows a dwarf-like figure with a fierce face associated with protection, childbirth, music, and the home. Great temples honor state gods, but ordinary families also turn to deities who stand close to daily fears. You thank the woman and step back into the lane. The entire village has become quiet. Doors are closed or shaded. Work crews have returned from the tombs or paused in shelters. Even the flies seem slower. Above the roofs, the sun is almost directly overhead. The hour without shadow is beginning. At midday, the village changes from a place into a collection of refuges. Every useful shadow is occupied. Workers sit beneath reed awnings, against northern walls and inside. Doorways. Donkeys stand nose to tail under a rough shelter. Water jars are wrapped in damp cloth. Tools lie untouched on mats because metal and stone exposed to the sun become painful to hold. You enter a work shelter cut partly into the slope. The roof is low and the air smells of limestone dust, sweat, and oil. A dozen people sit or lie in silence. Nobody asks you to entertain them. Rest is not laziness here. It is a response to conditions that can overwhelm the body. The temperature outside approaches the modern equivalent of 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body attempts to keep its core near a narrow, safe range. Sweat spreads across the skin. Blood moves towards the surface. If water and salts are not replaced, muscles weaken, judgment dulls, and the heart strains. Heat exhaustion can arrive through headache, nausea, dizziness, and confusion. Heat stroke is more dangerous still, when the body's temperature rises and the mind begins to fail. Ancient Egyptians do not know these medical categories, but they recognize the signs. A person who staggers, stops sweating, speaks strangely, or cannot stand, must be moved into shade. cooled and given attention. Across the shelter, an older stonecutter watches a young porter whose face has gone pale beneath dust. He pulls the young man away from the entrance, loosens his linen, and places a wet cloth against his neck and chest. Water is offered in small amounts rather than forced all at once. No prayer replaces the cooling. No spell prevents the cloth from being used. Ancient medicine mixes practical observation, inherited remedies, and religious ideas. Illness may be understood through physical causes, hostile forces, or both. A healer can set a fracture, dress a wound with linen and honey, and also speak protective words. The categories that modern people separate, medicine, magic, and religion, overlap. The porter slowly recovers. Someone passes you a cup of water flavored faintly with dates or herbs. Another shares a pinch of salted food. The water is warm, but your body receives it greedily. Outside, light fills the doorway like white cloth. You cannot see your own shadow when you stand near the entrance. The sun is too high, pressing it almost beneath your feet. This is the point, around which the whole day bends. Work does not vanish entirely. Bakers still watch ovens. Animals still need water. Priests still follow ritual schedules. Guards still stand at gates, though they rotate when possible. But heavy movement slows. Conversations shorten. The city waits. The stonecutter beside you says that this is how the sun god reveals power, not through thunder, but through certainty. Every day, the solar boat crosses the sky. Every evening, it enters the dangerous night. Every dawn it returns. You think about the people in the tombs nearby, surrounded by images, meant to help them travel through that darkness. Royal burial chambers depict solar journeys, divine gates, and transformations of the dead. The king hopes to join the sun's cycle and rise renewed. For the living, renewal is simpler. A cup of water, a patch of shade, the patience to wait. Minutes pass without shape. Somewhere outside, a cicada begins a harsh, continuous call. The sound seems to vibrate with the heat. You close your eyes. The floor beneath your hands is cooler than the air. For now, survival means doing nothing at all. The quiet hour stretches. People speak occasionally, but voices remain low. In the shelter, social rank softens. A skilled painter rests beside a porter. A foreman shares water with an apprentice. Heat creates its own temporary equality because everybody depends on the same narrow conditions. You lean against the wall and listen. One worker describes a dream in which his dead father stood beside a canal and refused to speak. Another says the dream may require an offering. Dreams can carry meaning, warning, or contact with the divine. People may write to deceased relatives, asking them to stop causing trouble or help resolve disputes among the living. A man near the doorway laughs and says perhaps the father was only angry because the son still owes him a proper memorial meal. The shelter relaxes. Ancient Egyptians are often presented with solemn faces because tomb and temple art survives best. but surviving texts reveal humor, satire, love poetry, insults, and absurdity. Scribes draw animals behaving like people. Mice are served by cats. A lion plays a board game. Students complain. Lovers compare each other to flowers, horses, and sweet beer. The civilization surrounding you is formal in public and deeply human in private. Someone produces a Senate board scratched into wood. The game uses pieces, moved across 30 squares. Its rules in your period are not preserved perfectly for modern players, but the game is widespread and can carry symbolic connections to passage through the afterlife. Here it is simply a way to fill the hot hour. Two workers begin playing. Others offer advice they have not been asked to give. You watch pieces move while your breathing slows. Beyond the shelter, the royal valley lies under a hard white sky. Tomb entrances hide behind cliffs and rubble. Inside them, artisans work by lamplight, plastering walls and painting scenes with pigments mixed in small bowls. The deeper chambers remain relatively stable in temperature, protected by stone, yet the route to them and the dust within create other hardships. The men beside you may work 8-day stretches followed by rest days, though schedules vary across periods and crews. Attendance is recorded. Absences receive explanations. Tools are issued and returned. Copper. Chisels are weighed because valuable metal must be accounted for. Every perfect painted wall depends on administration almost as much as artistry. A messenger enters the shelter carrying a small ostracon. He reads a note from an official. The afternoon delivery to a tomb worksite will be delayed until the sun lowers. Nobody objects. You have time before your next task. The older stonecutter points to the limestone wall beside you. In its pale surface, tiny shells are trapped. He has spent his life cutting rock made from the remains of ancient seas, though he does not describe it that way. To him, each layer has a different quality. Some cuts cleanly, some crumbles, some holds paint. His knowledge is geological. Without being written as geology, you run a finger across the stone. Civilizations often remember kings, but survival belongs to people who understand materials. Which clay seals a jar, which reed bends without breaking, which wood resists insects, which stone accepts a sharp edge, which pigment fades in sun, and which knot holds under strain. The worker knows the mountain through his hands. The light outside shifts almost imperceptibly. A narrow shadow begins to extend from the doorway. The sun has passed its highest point. The worst heat is not over, but the day has turned towards evening. One by one, people stand. The path to the worksite begins beneath a sky that has lost some of its white glare, but none of its heat. You join a small crew carrying water, lamp oil, linen thread, and sharpened tools towards a tomb cut into the western cliffs. The path climbs between limestone ridges. No tree grows here. No canal follows. The cultivated valley, is hidden behind stone, and the desert seems to fill the whole world. At the entrance, An official records the delivery. The doorway is little, more than a dark opening in pale rock. You step inside. Cool air closes around you. The change is so sudden that your skin tightens. The passage smells of dust, lamp smoke, and damp plaster. Light comes from small oil lamps, their flames reflected by pale walls. Some lamps are designed with salted wicks or carefully chosen oils to reduce smoke, though no underground chamber remains truly clean. The tomb is unfinished. Stonecutters work at the far end, widening a corridor with copper chisels and heavy stone tools. Behind them, others smooth the walls. Plasterers fill cracks. Draftsmen lay down red grids and outlines. Senior artists correct proportions in black. Painters follow with color. The process is ordered like a living assembly line. A royal tomb is not simply dug and decorated. It is planned according to religious texts, tradition, geology, and the unpredictable length of a king's reign. If the ruler dies earlier than expected, work may accelerate. Chambers may remain smaller. Decoration may be completed unevenly. Eternity has deadlines. You carry the lamp oil to a recessed shelf. The keeper checks the seal, breaks it, and smells the contents before accepting the jar. On one wall, a scene shows the solar bark moving through the night. Gods, serpents, and transformed beings fill registers arranged with deliberate precision. The king appears again and again, not because time is confused, but because the image represents stages of a cosmic journey. The text beside it is not meant for ordinary entertainment. It is equipment for the afterlife. You stand before colors that may remain visible more than 3,000 years later, long after the artist's houses collapse and their names disappear from common memory. Yet here, now, the paint is fresh, enough to smell. A draftsman looks up from his work. He is correcting the hand of a junior painter whose line has drifted beyond the grid. The correction is calm but exact. Mistakes can be plastered over and redrawn, but the wall must eventually appear perfect. Near the floor, you notice a quick sketch on a limestone chip. A man's face with an exaggerated nose. It is probably a private joke, never intended for the tomb's owner. The workers who create sacred eternity also doodle during breaks. A foreman invites you to sit beside a water jar. He asks about the temperature outside. You tell him that the shadows have begun to return. He nods, relieved. The crew must soon walk back to the village. Inside the mountain, the sun cannot reach you, but the body still carries the heat collected outside. Sweat cools against your skin. Your breathing becomes easier. You think of the king whose body may one day rest here, surrounded by gold, furniture, food, clothing, amulets, and spells. His tomb is designed to defeat death. The workers around you are more concerned with defeating the afternoon. Walk home. The foreman seals an empty oil jar to prove the delivery was used correctly. He gives you a marked ostracon to return to the Eastern office. You secure it beneath your belt. Then you follow the crew back towards the entrance. The rectangle of daylight ahead looks like fire. Outside the tomb, the afternoon seems louder. Wind has begun moving through the valley, but it carries heat rather than coolness. Dust runs in small streams across the path. The workers wrap cloth over their mouths and noses as they descend. At a shaded checkpoint, a scribe waits with an attendance list. He calls each man's name. The foreman answers. Tools are counted. Copper. Chisels are weighed or checked. Missing equipment can become a serious accusation because copper is valuable and endlessly reusable. A worn chisel can be melted and recast. Nothing useful should disappear into private hands without record. When the scribe reaches one absent worker, the foreman explains that the man remains in the village caring for a sick child. The scribe makes a note. This single mark reveals the power of writing. Without it, the absence exists only in memory. With it, the reason can be checked, questioned, accepted, or used later in a dispute. Writing allows institutions to extend their attention across distance and time. You hand over the ostracon from the tomb. The scribe reads it quickly and adds a line to his account. You cannot follow the signs, but you recognize numbers and common marks from repeated exposure. He notices your attention. For a moment, he turns the flake so you can see. The text records oil delivered, oil remaining, and the seal of the keeper. It is not poetry. It is not a royal decree. It is proof that a jar reached the correct room. Most ancient writing was probably practical, and most practical writing has vanished. Papyrus decays when moisture, insects, and reuse reach it. The survival of a document is an accident of climate and burial. What future historians know about Egypt comes disproportionately from tombs, temples, and desert settlements where material endured. Ordinary life leaves quieter evidence. The scribe rinses his reed brush and taps it against the palette. His hands are stained with ink. He tells you that he once hoped to work inside a great temple library, copying sacred and medical texts. Instead, he counts chisels beneath a hot awning. The disappointment is gentle, almost humorous. You ask whether he regrets learning to write. He looks at the laborers descending the path, then at his own shaded seat. He does not answer directly. Scribal texts often praise literacy as freedom from physical labor, but a scribe can still be overworked, underpaid, or trapped beneath a superior's temper. Education changes the kind of hardship. It does not end hardship itself. A messenger arrives with a papyrus letter rolled and tied. The scribe breaks the seal, scans the lines and frowns. A ration shipment expected. Tomorrow has been delayed. He begins drafting a reply before the messenger has finished drinking. Administration moves faster than donkeys only because messages carry urgency. Your own task now points back towards the eastern bank. The scribe gives you a receipt and asks you to deliver it before the office closes. You place the ostracon in a padded pouch. A broken record is still broken record. The crew starts towards the village. You continue downhill towards the river. The sun has begun leaning west, throwing longer shadows from the cliffs. Yet the stones beneath your feet release heat stored through the day. Above you, the sky remains empty and blue. Below, the Nile appears as a dark line of relief. Before reaching the landing, you pass a small administrative compound attached to a temple estate. A man sits outside with one foot raised on a stool, his ankle wrapped in linen. He calls to the porter ahead of you, asking for more water. The porter waves you closer instead. You still carry a flask. The injured man is a survey assistant. He stepped badly while crossing. Loose stone and cannot place weight on the foot. A healer has examined him and ordered rest, cooling and a supportive wrapping. The man is more irritated than frightened. Missing work means explaining himself to a scribe. You offer water. He drinks and thanks you. Inside the compound is a room associated with learned texts and temple knowledge, sometimes described by the Egyptian phrase translated as House of Life. Such institutions may preserve and copy religious, ritual, medical, and scholarly writings, though their exact organization varies through time. A junior healer emerges carrying folded linen and a small bowl. The mixture inside smells of honey and herbs. Honey can help protect some wounds because of its physical and chemical properties, though the ancient explanation may involve both practical experience and sacred tradition. Linen bandages keep dressings in place. Splints, surgery, cautery, and plant remedies appear in surviving medical papyri alongside spells against unseen forces. The healer checks the man's toes, presses the swelling, and asks where pain travels. Observation matters. Egyptian medical texts can describe symptoms in a structured way, examine the patient, state a diagnosis, judge whether the condition is treatable, and prescribe action. Some cases are declared things the healer will fight. Others are things he will treat. A few are described as conditions for which nothing can be done. The honesty is striking. Ancient medicine is not a miracle system lost to time. It contains effective practices, ineffective practices, and ideas that belong to its culture. What makes it impressive is the attempt to observe, classify, and remember. A child in the doorway watches the bandaging. Perhaps she will remember the sequence years from now. Wash, examine, wrap, support, rest. Knowledge passes through texts, but also through eyes and hands. The healer glances at your face and asks whether you have been drinking. You say yes. He tells you to drink again anyway. He has seen too many people arrive after the heat has taken their judgment. You obey. Beside the doorway hangs a small protective amulet. Images of deities, such as Sekhmet, Isis, Thoth, or Bez, can accompany healing. The body is physical, but life is also entangled with divine order, dangerous forces, and personal fate. The survey assistant jokes that if the goddess truly wished to help, she could explain his injury to the payroll clerk. The healer tells him the goddess has more important patients. You smile and move on. The brief stop has delayed you, but the sun is lower now. In the open, your shadow stretches clearly beside you. For the first time since morning, the day feels as though it may eventually end. Near the western landing, a market has gathered beneath awnings of linen, reed matting, and palm branches. It is not a permanent row of stone shops. Goods spread across mats, baskets, and low tables. Sellers use shade wherever walls, boats, and temporary roofs provided. The air carries fish, garlic, oil, sweat, fruit, dung, smoke, and river mud. People bargain with voices that have recovered now that the sun is descending. A fisherman displays tilapia and mullet on wet reeds. A woman sells bread, onions, and small cakes sweetened with dates. Potters stack bowls in nested towers. A metal worker offers repaired blades and fishhooks. A farmer has cucumbers, melons, and greens kept beneath damp cloth. Another trader measures oil into small jars from a larger sealed vessel. No coins ring across the market. Exchange can happen through goods, grain measures, and standard values, expressed in units such as Deben. A buyer may compare the worth of sandals, cloth, oil, or tools according to agreed measures, even when payment is made through a mixture of commodities. You stop beside a basket of dates. The seller names a price that assumes you are tired, thirsty, and foolish. You answer with a lower offer. The argument is polite theater. She praises the quality of the fruit, the cost of transport, and the disrespect shown by your suggestion. You point to 2 bruised dates and remind her that the sun is falling. Eventually, you exchange a small amount of grain from your personal ration for a handful. The dates are soft and intensely sweet. Sugar reaches the blood quickly. You eat only 2 and save the rest for home. At the next stall, a perfume seller opens a jar containing scented fat or oil. Wealthy people can use elaborate blends. Ordinary households may rely on simpler oils, incense, and herbs. In heat, oil protects dry skin, but can also hold dust. Cleanliness is a constant negotiation among water, labor, and availability. A barber works beneath a wall, shaving a man's scalp with a copper blade, while the customer complains about the price. Hair can be worn naturally, cut short, shaved, or covered with wigs depending on class, occupation, fashion, and personal preference. Removing hair may help with lice and heat. But the popular image of every Egyptian permanently bald is too simple. A group of soldiers passes through the market. Their equipment includes bows, shields, and axes, but their linen garments are practical rather than theatrical. Egypt's empire during the New Kingdom reaches into Nubia and the Near East. Tribute, trade, and warfare bring foreign goods and people into cities like Thebes. You hear several languages within a few minutes. Egypt is not isolated. Nubians, Libyans, Levantines, and others live, serve, trade, and travel within its borders. Some arrive as captives, some as soldiers, merchants, diplomats, craftspeople, or families whose ancestors settled generations earlier. The market reflects a connected world. At a shaded stall, a Syrian-style vessel stands beside Egyptian bowls. A piece of imported wood rests beneath a carpenter's hand. A blue glass bead catches sunlight. Long-distance exchange has entered ordinary objects. You fill your flask at a public jar and thank the person tending it. Water distribution is labor too. Someone must carry, clean, cover, and replace the vessel. Before leaving, you buy a small cucumber. Its crisp, watery flesh feels more valuable than jewelry. The ferry horn sounds from the river. You secure the receipt pouch and move towards the landing, carrying dates for your household and the taste of cool cucumber in your mouth. The ferry is crowded with people returning east. Workers sit close together beneath the canopy. Baskets fill the center. A goat complains from the bow. Two children lean over the side until their mother pulls them back by their linen garments. You find a place near the stern. When the boat leaves the bank, air begins moving across the deck. It is hot, but motion changes everything. Sweat evaporates. The river reflects, light upward. Yet its presence makes the valley feel alive again. A boatman lowers a clay jar into a shaded basket and pours cups for passengers. Each person drinks without ceremony. On land, households, institutions may be separated by rank, but a ferry compresses everyone into the same small wooden world. Across from you sits a woman with a basket of laundry. Linen has been washed, beaten, rinsed, and twisted. Work that requires water and strength. Beside her, a mason's hands are white with dust. A clerk guards a papyrus roll under his arm. A priest carries flowers beginning to wilt in the heat. The current slides north, while the sail uses wind from the opposite direction. River navigation is a partnership between geography and skill. You look at the banks. Fields form a green corridor through the desert. Without the Nile, this dense civilization could not exist. But the familiar phrase that Egypt is the gift of the Nile can hide the human work required to use that gift. Floodwater must be channeled. Boundaries must be measured after inundation. Dikes must be repaired. Grain must be stored. Boats must be built. Disputes must be judged. A river provides possibility, not civilization by itself. As the ferry reaches midstream, the western cliffs catch the afternoon sun. Their pale faces turn gold. Tomb openings vanish into shadow. The village you left is almost invisible against stone. On the eastern bank, temple pylons rise above the city. Smoke gathers in, a thin layer over roofs. The air there will still be hot, but the deepest lanes are returning to shade. The mason beside you points north and speaks of the pyramids. He has never seen them. Few ordinary people travel the full length of Egypt without reason. The country is long, and movement costs time, food, and permission. Yet stories of the great monuments circulate everywhere. He says that the ancients knew how to build better. People in every age imagine earlier generations possessed lost discipline. The clerk answers that the ancients probably complained just as much. The fairy laughs. A flock of birds rises from reeds near the eastern shore. Fish break the surface and vanish. For one brief moment, the river breeze feels almost cool. You close your eyes and let it pass over your face. The boat touches the landing with a hollow wooden sound. The eastern city receives you again. The receipt must reach the temple office before evening, but the direct road passes through a district of ovens. You smell it before you see it. Bread, smoke, hot clay and fermenting grain fill the lane. Bakers work in courtyards and open-fronted rooms where heat from the ovens adds another layer to the day. Some bread is baked against the inner walls of tall clay molds or in pottery forms. Other loaves cook on heated surfaces or within dome-shaped ovens. The people here cannot simply stop at midday. Dough continues changing. Fires must be managed. Rations must be prepared for households, workers, and offerings. A baker's arms shine with sweat as he reaches towards an oven using a wooden tool. Another worker shapes dough on a low table. A child carries dried fuel, wood where available, but also reeds, straw, dung cakes, and agricultural waste. In a country with limited timber, nothing that can burn is ignored. The lane is brutally hot. You move close to the opposite wall where shade remains. A baker sees you looking and offers a cup of water. His own face is red from the oven. You ask how he endures it. He shrugs and points to a schedule scratched on a board. Work begins before dawn. The hottest tasks rotate among several people. Water jars stand in the darkest corner. The courtyard roof has openings that allow smoke and rising hot air to escape. Wet mats hang near a doorway. Again, survival is not one secret. It is organization. At a neighboring brewery, grain is being processed into beer. Workers crumble baked material, mix mash, strain liquid and fill jars for fermentation. The precise recipes vary, and modern reconstructions continue to debate methods, but the connection between bread and beer remains close. The brewery smells sour, sweet, and alive. Jars are sealed with mud stoppers and marked, a batch made for a temple. Festival receives different attention from daily ration beer. Quality, strength, and flavor can vary widely. You receive a small cup of thin beer from a worker you know. It is cool, from storage, cloudy, and slightly tart. You drink slowly, then follow with water. The evening meal in your house will depend on what remains. Bread, lentils or beans, onions, perhaps fish, greens, dates, and beer. Meat is not absent from ordinary life, but it is less constant than tomb scenes of abundance suggest. Cattle are valuable. Goats, sheep, pigs, birds, and fish provide protein according to region, wealth, and circumstance. Festival days change diets. So do successful fishing and hunting. The baker removes a fresh loaf. Steam escapes when it cracks. For a moment, hunger replaces heat. You buy a small loaf using part of your remaining grain allowance. It is too hot to hold, so the baker wraps it in cloth. The office bell sounds somewhere beyond the lane. You thank him and hurry on, carrying warm bread through a city that smells of evening. You reach the temple office while the final clerks are gathering their pallets. The room is open towards a shaded courtyard. Papyrus rolls rest in wooden boxes. Clay ceilings lie in labeled baskets. A shelf holds ink, cakes, spare reed brushes, string, and small weights. Nothing resembles the monumental Egypt carved on pylons. Yet rooms like this allow those monuments to exist. You hand the receipt to a senior clerk. He checks the seal, reads the oil account, and compares it with a line on another document. His lips move as he counts. Then he places a red mark beside the entry and presses a small seal into clay attached to your return token. The task that began before sunrise is complete. You have carried grain, oil, thread, and information across both banks of the Nile. You have entered a temple, a work village, a royal tomb, a market, and a bakery. Nothing you delivered was grand, but each item connected one part of the city to another. This is how complex societies survive, through people whose work seems small when viewed alone. A clerk stretches his back and complains that the heat has softened the wax on a writing board. Another covers papyrus to protect it from dust. Outside, a servant sprinkles water across the courtyard floor. The brief coolness rises like a blessing. The senior clerk offers you a final cup before you leave. He asks whether the Western ration arrived without dispute. You mention the argument about oil measures. He sighs and makes another note. The note may lead nowhere. It may become tomorrow's problem. Bureaucracy preserves complaints as efficiently as it creates them. When you step into the street again, the light has changed. The sun is still fierce, but it no longer stands above you. Shadows stretch from every doorway. The city begins expanding from shade into open space. Children reappear in the lanes. Vendors uncover goods. Men lead animals towards water. A musician tests a reed pipe somewhere behind a wall. The day has survived its own center. Your neighborhood is louder when you return. On the roof, linen sheets stir in the first useful breeze. In the courtyard, a family member grinds herbs with salt. Someone else needs dough for tomorrow. The youngest child sleeps beside a wall, exhausted by heat that demanded nothing from him except endurance. You place the dates, cucumber, and warm loaf on a low table. They are received with satisfaction greater than their cost. Food brought home carries a story of the journey that obtained it. Before eating, you wash dust from your hands, face, and feet. Water runs brown into the basin. Full bathing is possible in the Nile or with poured water, but daily household cleaning often uses small amounts. Carefully. Natron, oils, and abrasive substances can help clean the body and cloth. pleasant smell matters in a climate where sweat, animals, smoke, and crowded streets meet constantly. The house has remained relatively bearable because shutters stayed closed against direct sun. Thick walls delayed heat entering the rooms. Now doors and roof openings are adjusted to release what the bricks have stored. A damp reed mat hangs where evening air can pass through it. You sit in the courtyard while an older relative checks the back of your neck and your eyes. Heat illness can continue after a person returns home. You are told to drink before speaking about the day. The water in the covered jar is cooler than the air. You drink twice. Then the questions begin. Did the Western workers receive their grain? Was the tomb passage finished? Did the market still have fish? Was the scribe with the crooked nose still arguing with everyone? News travels through ordinary carriers. A city without printed papers, radio, or telephones still fills itself with information. Ferries, wells, workshops, markets, and bread ovens become places where stories move. You describe the injured survey assistant and the young porter overcome by heat. The household listens seriously. Everyone knows how quickly an ordinary day can become dangerous. Above the wall, the sky turns amber. The first true relief of evening enters the courtyard. You climb to the roof before the light disappears. Across the Nile, the sun lowers behind the necropolis. The western cliffs become red, then purple. Tombs, villages, and work paths vanish into distance. The place you crossed at midday now looks quiet enough to belong only to the dead. On neighboring roofs, families spread mats and shake out linen. Birds wheel above the river. Smoke rises from hundreds of evening fires. Temple music travels faintly through the city. Drums, clapping, voices, and the metallic rattle of a sistrum. The setting sun carries deep meaning. The solar god enters the western horizon and begins a dangerous journey through night. Darkness is not simply absence. It is a realm through which order must travel and return. Yet people do not stand in constant terror of sunset. Children play, neighbors gossip. A man repairs a basket. Someone calls for a missing goat. Cosmic belief and household routine occupy the same roof. The first star appears. Ancient Egyptians observe the sky closely. Certain stars and star groups help organize night hours. The heliacal rising of Sirius, appearing before dawn after a period of absence, is associated with approaching Nile flood and the new year in parts of Egyptian history. Priests, farmers, and administrators all depend on cycles larger than a single day. Your day has felt ruled by the sun, but the civilization around you is also ruled by water and stars. The disk finally disappears. Relief does not arrive at once. Walls and ground continue releasing heat. But without direct sunlight, the balance begins to change. A breeze rises from the river. People across the roofs pause to feel it. The evening meal is placed on woven mats near the open doorway. There is bread, onions, cooked lentils, a little fish, cucumber, dates, and beer diluted or served according to household taste. The food is simple, but after the long day, every smell feels generous. People eat with their hands, tearing bread and using it to gather softer food. Bowls are shared. The child wakes and receives the coolest piece of cucumber. The fish was caught that morning and dried or cooked with salt and herbs. Lentils and beans provide nourishment that requires no royal estate. Dates supply sweetness. Onions and garlic appear so often in popular accounts of Egyptian workers that they become symbols, but the wider diet includes many vegetables, fruits, oils, and regional variations. A small portion of bread and beer is placed near a household shrine. The offering is not waste in the modern sense. Food presented to a deity or deceased relative can later be consumed depending on context. The act creates relationship, memory, and obligation. The dead remain part of the family when their names are spoken and their images cared for. A tiny figure of Bes stands near the shrine, protective and deliberately fierce. Another amulet bears the eye of Horus. Religion here is not confined to enormous temples. It sits beside childbirth, illness, sleep, food, and fear. The family speaks about tomorrow's work. A roof mat needs repair. Grain must be ground. Someone will visit a relative across the river. A dispute over a borrowed jar should be settled before it becomes a legal matter. Ordinary life continues beneath the names of gods and kings. As you eat the fresh loaf from the baker's street, the crust breaks softly. The inside is still slightly warm. The sun touches the western cliffs. For a few minutes, every wall in Thebes seems to glow. Before the household settles fully for the night, a neighbor asks you to help return a borrowed jar to a large house near the edge of the district. The walk is short. The sky is darkening, and the streets now hold the day's stored heat rather than direct sunlight. Doors stand open. Lamps appear in niches. The city feels wider because people no longer cling to shadow. The house behind the high wall belongs to an official whose work connects him to temple estates. A servant accepts the jar, then asks you to wait while its owner confirms the seal painted beneath the handle. From the entrance court, you glimpse a garden. There is a rectangular pool surrounded by palms, figs, vines, and flowering plants. Waterbirds settle at the edge. The garden is not simply decoration. Trees create shade. Water cools nearby air through evaporation. Fruit, herbs, and flowers support the household and its rituals. But maintaining such a place requires land, labor, and a reliable supply of water carried or channeled from the Nile. Comfort has a workforce. A gardener lifts water using a shaduf, even as evening begins. Another person clears fallen leaves from the pool. Servants dampen the courtyard floor before guests arrive. The official's family will enjoy cooler air because other bodies moved water through the heat. The owner finally appears and examines the jar. He thanks you and offers a small cup of pomegranate drink or watered wine from a shaded storage. Wine exists in Egypt, especially among the wealthy, and for ritual use. But beer remains far more common in ordinary households. You drink carefully while looking at painted walls. Marsh scenes show birds, fish, and abundant plants. The images celebrate fertility and order. Outside the garden wall, dust gathers in the street. The contrast is not hidden. Ancient Egypt is capable of extraordinary luxury. Carved furniture, fine linen, scented oils, jewelry, imported wood, wine, and elaborate meals. It is also a society where many people depend on grain rations and shared water jars. The heat reveals that difference with particular clarity. Wealth buys shade, space, and people to carry water. Poverty requires stronger dependence on neighbors and public systems. The official returns the jar with a small piece of fruit for your household. The gesture is generous, but it does not erase the structure that made the garden possible. You step back into the lane. Behind you, the garden remains green beneath the first star. Ahead, the neighborhood roofs wait in the open air. As you return, music reaches the street from a small gathering near a shrine. The sound is not loud enough to disturb the evening. A reed pipe carries the melody. Hands clap a steady rhythm. A frame drum answers softly, and a sistrum adds a metallic shimmer associated with worship, celebration, and goddesses such as Hathor. People stand in a loose circle beneath lamps. Some have come from work, still wearing dusty linen. Others have washed and changed. Children move closer whenever food appears. The gathering is not a grand state festival. It may mark a household offering, a local holy day, or simply the decision to share music after an oppressive day. Ancient calendars contain many festivals, some involving temple processions in which a divine image travels outside its sanctuary in a covered bark. Such events allow ordinary people to approach a god more closely, ask questions through oracles, and participate in public celebration. Tonight, the scale is smaller. A singer begins a song about enjoying life while time permits. Egyptian texts sometimes urge listeners to dress well, use perfume, and celebrate, because no one can know the full nature of death. This does not contradict the civilization's famous concern with the afterlife. It grows from the same awareness that life is fragile. You remain at the edge of the group. A child dances without rhythm. An older man attempts to clap and repeatedly misses the beat. Two women laugh until they must sit down. The day's severity loosens its hold through shared sound. Music requires no literacy. It crosses rank more easily than documents do. Work songs coordinate movement. Lullabies calm children. Temple musicians serve gods. Professional performers entertain wealthy households. Soldiers march to rhythm. Mourners sing for the dead. For a civilization known through silent stone, ancient Egypt was likely full of sound. The river, tools, livestock, market arguments, prayers, grinding stones, children, drums, and voices formed an acoustic world that no ruin can preserve. The song ends. People exchange bread and dates. A cup passes from hand to hand. You do not stay long. Your body has begun asking for sleep, and tomorrow will start before sunrise again. Still, as you climb towards your roof, the final notes follow you between the walls. Night reveals the price of the day. Your shoulders ache from carrying jars and grain. Salt has dried in pale lines on your linen. The skin beneath your sandals is sore. Across the neighborhood, people compare headaches, swollen feet, and work left unfinished. Extreme heat does not create one dramatic enemy. It steals small amounts from everyone. Speed, concentration, patience, water, sleep, and time. A wealthy household can buy more labor, larger shaded rooms, gardens, servants, and imported oils. A poor household depends more heavily on public water, shared shade, and the strength of family members. Climate affects everyone, but never equally. The same is true of ancient labor. Some people own land or hold office. Some are tenants, dependents, captives, or enslaved servants. Some receive state rations. Some trade independently. Egyptian society is hierarchical, and survival rests partly on where a person stands within it. Yet, no household survives alone. Neighbors watch children while adults fetch water. Workers share jars. Families lend grain. Boatmen carry messages. Healers preserve methods. Scribes maintain accounts. Farmers repair channels that serve more than one field. Cooperation is not evidence that life is peaceful. It is evidence that life is difficult enough to require others. You lie back on the roof mat and listen to voices in nearby lanes. The sounds form an invisible map of dependence. Someone draws water. Someone sings to a child. Someone laughs at a story you cannot hear clearly. The city cools one human action at a time. You spread your mat beneath the stars and place the day's sealed token beside the stair, so it can be returned in the morning. The object is small. Clay pressed by an official mark. By tomorrow it may be broken, reused, or discarded. Thousands of years later, a fragment, like it might be found in dust and catalogued by someone who cannot know. Your face, history, preserves unevenly. Kings carve names into stone. Wealthy families commission tombs. Temples copy sacred texts. Officials leave statues asking future visitors to speak their names. Ordinary people survive more often through accidents. A letter thrown into rubbish. A sandal left in a house. A fingerprint in brick. A joke drawn on limestone. A skeleton showing years of work. Your life will not be written as a biography, yet the city cannot function without lives like yours. Every loaf requires farmers, millers, water carriers, fuel gatherers, potters, and bakers. Every painted tomb requires miners, toolmakers, porters, scribes, plasterers, and artists. Every temple ceremony rests on fields, boats, storage rooms, and accounts. Even the king's eternity depends on people who need to reach shade before noon. This is the deeper story of ancient Egypt. The monuments are real, but they are the visible tips of an enormous human system. Beneath them are schedules, meals, arguments, repairs, friendships, and ordinary days repeated until they become centuries. You think of the people you passed. The farmer lifting water, the apprentice correcting a sign, the baker turning towards the oven, the porter recovering in the shelter, the healer wrapping an ankle, the woman repairing linen, the boatman warning you to drink. None believed they were background figures. Each stood at the center of a life as complete as your own. The stars above Thebes continue turning. Somewhere beyond the roofs, a temple guard calls the hour. Somewhere on the river, a sail shifts in darkness. Somewhere in the western village, an artist dreams of a line he will paint tomorrow. You close your hand around the clay token, then set it down. The day is finished. Its smallest evidence remains. Lying beneath the open sky, you begin to count the things that protected you today. There was no machine humming in a window. No electric pump pushed water through hidden pipes. No refrigerator waited behind a door. Nothing in. The city could lower the temperature of an entire room by pressing a switch. And yet, technology surrounded you from the moment you woke. It was present in the roof, chosen for sleeping. The thick mud brick walls that delayed the day's heat. The small windows that reduced glare. And the shaded courtyard that created a second climate inside the house. It was present in linen woven from flax, light enough to release warmth from the skin. It was present in clay jars whose porous surfaces allowed evaporation to cool the water within. It was present in the shape of the street. Narrow lanes kept sunlight from reaching the ground for much of the day. High walls created long shadows. Awnings turned open courts into usable workshops. Damp mats changed the air passing through doorways. Trees and garden pools gave wealthy homes pockets of cooler space, while public jars and shaded landings offered smaller relief to everyone else. Technology was also time. People began difficult work before sunrise. They paused when shadows disappeared. Tasks that could wait moved towards evening. Heavy loads traveled by river whenever possible. Work crews rotated through ovens, fields, and exposed paths, instead of pretending one body could endure without limit. A schedule can be as important as a tool. The city also depended on knowledge stored outside writing. A potter knew which clay would sweat water without cracking. A builder knew how thick a wall must be. A boatman read current and wind. A farmer recognized when leaves showed thirst. A healer knew the face of a person becoming confused from heat. A grandmother knew which child needed another cup, even after saying no. None of these people needed to describe evaporation, thermal mass, circulation, or dehydration. using modern science. Their explanations might be different, but repeated observation had already revealed what worked. This is how human knowledge often begins. First comes attention, then memory, then habit. Only later does someone name the hidden reason. The civilization around you is famous for visible technologies: stone, monuments, boats, writing, calendars, and carefully worked metals. But its invisible technologies may matter more during an ordinary day. Cooperation, measurement, stored grain, shared water, work rules, family, care. The expectation that a neighbor will notice when someone stops, behaving normally in the heat. These systems are imperfect. Officials steal, rations arrive late. Wealth creates cooler lives for some and harder labor for others. People still become sick. Crops still fail. A summer can still take lives. Adaptation is not victory over nature. It is the art of reducing danger enough for tomorrow to remain possible. You think of the colossal statue in the temple court, designed to show a king untouched by time. Its stone face carried no sweat, its eyes never narrowed against sunlight. Its body required no water, but the statue could not build the shade around it. Living people did that. Living people quarried the stone, shaped the tools, carried the grain, repaired the boats, copied the accounts, and passed cups through a crowded shelter at noon. The true achievement of the city is not that it ignored the desert, it is that it learned to live beside it. A cup waits near your mat for the moment before dawn, when the cycle begins again. Someone filled it because experience says the morning should start with water. You place your hand against the roof. At last, the brick feels cool. The stars multiply until the sky no longer seems empty. Without electric light, the night is deep and crowded with detail. The Milky Way stretches above the valley, constellations familiar to later. Ages appear in different stories and arrangements. The moon, when present, turns temple stone pale and leaves the lanes in silver shadow. You settle beneath a thin linen sheet. The roof still holds warmth, but the air moves. A clay cup stands beside your mat. You drink once more before sleep. In several hours, someone may wake to check the household, calm a child, or prepare the earliest bread. From the river comes the faint knock of wood against wood. Boats continue traveling at night when conditions and moonlight allow. A dog barks, then stops. Insects pulse near the gardens. You think back to the morning when the city was dark and the great heat existed only as a promise. Since then, the sun crossed every field, roof, workshop, and body in Thebes. It pressed workers into shade, slowed animals, warmed jars, and turned stone bright enough to hurt the eyes. But it did not stop the city. The city adapted around it. Work moved earlier. Walls grew thicker. Streets narrowed. Water remained covered. Clothing stayed light. Rest became part of labor. Knowledge passed through generations until surviving 120 degrees no longer looked heroic. It looked ordinary. That is perhaps the greatest wonder of the day, ending before the next sunrise. Tonight, you survived ancient Egypt without defeating an army, discovering a tomb, or speaking to a king. You survived by waking early, by carrying water before thirst became dangerous, by walking in shade whenever shade existed, by accepting that midday was stronger than pride, by trusting buildings, routines, and people shaped by centuries of experience. The monuments of Egypt may appear superhuman, but the civilization that built them was made from ordinary bodies, bodies that grew tired, overheated, healed, argued, laughed, ate, and slept. Tomorrow, scribes will return to their lists. Farmers will lift water. Bakers will light ovens. Artists will enter the mountain. Boats will cross between the living city and the western cliffs. The pharaoh's name will remain carved high above them. Most of their names will disappear. Yet the world they maintained will survive in bread molds, worn sandals, letters on broken pottery, fingerprints in mud brick, and painted lines hidden beneath stone. When later generations look back, they will see the day through what survives. A temple wall will show ideal offerings. A tomb will display tables crowded with food. A royal inscription will announce victory and perfect order. Those images are true in the sense that they express what people wish to preserve, but they cannot hold the whole temperature of a lived day. They cannot show how warm the water became in your flask before noon. They cannot preserve the moment a donkey refused another step, the irritation of dust beneath linen, the relief of entering a dark passage, or the quiet judgment in a baker's face when someone complained about heat beside his oven. The most important parts of survival rarely become monuments. They are too small, too frequent, and too shared. A cup placed in shade, a child pulled away from the sun, a workman told to sit down, a wet cloth passed without being requested, a neighbor carrying one side of a jar because the other person's hands have begun to shake. These actions leave little evidence, yet without them no city remains. Alive long enough to carve stone, civilization is often described through its greatest buildings, but it is sustained through attention, people noticing what must be done before danger becomes disaster. Tonight, your ordinary day has carried you closer to ancient Egypt than a crown or battlefield might have done. You have felt the civilization at the level where it truly existed in weight, thirst, shade, food, labor, memory, and care. The river did not make the people passive recipients of abundance. The sun did not make them helpless victims of climate, between water and desert. They created a rhythm strong enough to hold villages, cities, temples, farms, and families for thousands of years. One day, distant people will enter museums and look at the objects of your world through glass. They may admire a painted bowl, a reed sandal, or a worker's rough limestone note without knowing whose hands held it. They may call the object priceless, though in your life it was useful, because it carried water, protected a foot, or delivered a message before sunset. Time will change the value, but not the human intention behind it. Someone needed the thing to work. Someone repaired it when it broke. Someone placed it down expecting to return. That simple expectation connects you to them across more than 3,000 years. You also leave cups beside beds, postpone small tasks until morning, and trust that the world will still be waiting when you wake. Beneath language, clothing, and belief, ordinary life recognizes itself. The Nile beside you is ancient even now, but the need for rest is older still. Your body has carried enough heat, dust, and memory for one day. Nothing more is required from it tonight. For now, none of them knows they are ancient. They are simply alive. A final breeze moves across the roof. The heat stored in the city loosens its hold. Your breathing becomes slower. The sounds of Thebes soften into distance. Above you, stars turn quietly over the Nile. The sun is traveling through darkness now, and for a few hours it cannot reach you. Close your eyes. Let the river continue without you. Let the city keep its watch and sleep before the next sunrise begins.